Last episode gave you a little preview of the 4 attorney styles. And on this episode, we're going to deep dive into that first style, the swarmer. Are you being taken over in your case with needless issues? Is everything being brought up? Are you feel a victim of a death by 1,000 cuts? Oh my, you might be facing a swarmer. Now, the worst move when dealing with a swarmer is to fight back on every front. Why? You're going to spend too much of your budget, your time, your energy, and your money. And that's what the swarmer wants you to do. They want to beat you down by focusing on everything. But you got to narrow your focus to what's important to you. That's the key. All right, let me give you a little story that could bring this home. A potential client came to me after going from a big name attorney here in New York. And they saw that, the case was pending a few years. It wasn't going where they wanted. They were spending a lot of money. And they realized as the moneyed spouse, they may have to pay in part the attorney fees of the, opposing spouse. And they were trying to be reasonable. But this opposing spouse was out for vengeance. There was some bad blood between them. And then there's bad blood. It's hard to be reasonable. Hard for both sides to be reasonable. So when you get substituted as counsel, you file what's called a notice of appearance here in New York. You got to appear in this case. So you're the official attorney in the case. You substitute as counsel. The prior attorney's out. You're in. And when you give notice to the court, you also got to give notice to the other side. So they knew there was an attorney change. A new regime came in. And what this attorney did was just call my office. Now, thankfully, this was years ago, but even then, I did not take unscheduled calls. Not taking unscheduled calls, especially from an opposing counsel. Obviously, you take unscheduled calls if there's an emergency from your client, from the court, but it doesn't usually happen. And you need to have an agenda. You need to have settlement discussions or a letter. You have to have a basis for calls with opposing counsel because they just might be wasting your budget. And my office told this person, Mr. Shapiro's not available. This person said, oh, no worries, I'll just wait. And they literally waited for 30 minutes. I knew this because back then I had a phone system where I can see the red blinking light for 30 minutes. I was like, when is this person getting off the phone? And it was like a game between us. And I'm not giving up. And finally, this attorney dropped off after that amount of time. And I'm sure they billed all that time. So what you have to understand is when you're dealing with a swarmer, they don't need to win. What they do need to do is exhaust your budget. So let's put our lawyer hat on. Yes, we're going to put a lawyer hat on. You got to put your lawyer hat on too, your pseudo lawyer hat, to make sure you get this. So if you are getting energized, you're getting death by 1,000 cuts, small matters become big matters, everything's being thrown against the wall, seeing what sticks, that's a swarmer. 6-year-old, you let them cross the street. Next thing you know, there's a letter to the judge. You're 1 day late on child support. Next thing you know, there's an application to the court. You have to put child support through support collection unit because you're never going to pay child support, even though it came a day late, even though it might have been because of the mail. Now, what's really driving the swarmer? These are obviously just my thoughts, but here's what I see. I think there's a certain business model where non-moneyed spouses who try to retain counsel, it's expensive to retain counsel, can hire swarmers. Swarmers might not take as much money, and then they're going to go after the moneyed spouse. And the moneyed spouse in the traditional situation, the moneyed spouse is being unreasonable. Okay. So the non-moneyed spouse has to really act out for the moneyed spouse to take them seriously. But they can't do it they can't do it the easy way, hiring a top dog. They don't have those resources. So they have to hire someone who's just going to create chaos. And that's what the swarmer does. And then finally, after dealing with the swarmer, the moneyed spouse is going to settle. That's the hope. And, hopefully in the future, the attorney is going to move away from the billable hour. So it won't reward inefficiency and just selling time, but will reward efficiency. And that would be a flat fee model. So one thing I want to share with you to make sure you understand this, I think the noisier the swarmer gets, if you're being halfway reasonable with your positions, may mean you have a strong case. I mean, if you're noisy and then you're being unreasonable, that's a different situation. All right, so what to do? You got to really know your priorities. You got to really know your priorities when you're dealing with the swarmer. And you got to know when to respond and not to respond. My core message to you is don't take the bait. The overwhelming majority of what the swarmer is bringing up is needless. So, for example, if they make a 20-page application to the court and only 2 pages are related to the specific request and 18 pages are designed to just throw you under the bus, you don't have to have your attorney necessarily respond with 20 pages, responding 18 pages to them and throwing them under the bus. That's what expands the problems. Could you maybe just spend a page 2 or 3 responding lightly to their issues, denying it and moving on? Could you do that? I know that might feel risky because you want to go into detail. You want to clear your name. There will be a time to clear your name, but as long as you deny it, as long as you can address it in part in those papers, the judges, I don't think overall care. Okay. And again, these are risky moves. Talk to your attorney, but this is how it's done at the high levels. All right, so let me give you an action step. When you're dealing with a swarmer and there's all these requests, ask your attorney on a scale of 1 to 10, if your attorney's not getting this, that they're just wasting your money and time. On a scale of 1 to 10, how important is this to our objectives? How important is this? If it's just 1 through 4, not that important, don't respond. If it's 5, 6, 7, or I'm sorry, 4, 5, 6, maybe you have to respond. That's when you have to have that discussion. If it's 7, 8, 9 and above, yeah, you maybe really do have to respond. But you see, you're really trying to cut down what you're using your budget on. You're using your time on. You're using your emotion on. And that's how you deal with a swarmer. If not, they're just going to overpower you. All right, so next episode, we're going to go with the opposite style. It's called the brawler. That's where they deal with one issue and just really 1 or 2 issues and just really just harp on that the whole time, what to expect, how to deal with them. That's going to be our focus on our next episode. I'm Corey Shapiro. This is the Getting Divorced Without Losing Your Mind podcast. Let's step forward with clarity together.
This podcast offers general information only. It cannot replace legal advice. If you need tailored advice, contact an attorney licensed to practice in your area.